On August 11th, 2025, at around 2:11 p.m., bearing the hot weather, Ashley Fairley, a 51-year-old speech pathologist, and her daughter, Audrey Fairley, arrived at the Target store at 8601 Research Boulevard in North Austin to return a plastic fan. On a side note, a speech pathologist is a special doctor who helps disabled people speak clearly. Now, when they returned it and were rushing out, Audrey remembered that she also needed dance shoes, but they couldn't spend much time looking for the shoes. As just then, Ashley looked at her watch and noticed that it was 2:15 and that she had an appointment scheduled with the patient in a few hours. But just then, as Ashley and Audrey were walking towards the front door, they froze in horror as a loud bang echoed throughout the store, followed by the sound of something falling. Then Ashley and Audrey bolted towards the men's section and suddenly they found themselves surrounded by crowds of people running right alongside them. At one point, it seemed that they were stuck in a maze of shelves and clothes, but then they spotted an employee who was holding open the door for them to escape. Because all this happened in an instant, the adrenaline rush didn't even let Ashley stop to consider what was happening. But once she was out, she thought for a moment and realized that she was in the presence of an active shooter. And even in the middle of it all, Ashley thought of her patient.
Hello, I'm at Target and there's an active shooter and we're sitting outside back. I am not going to make today's 3 o'clock session and we'll need to cancel. I'm really frazzled.
But while Audrey and Ashley were out of danger, on the other side of the store, they didn't know that the carnage had just begun. The man who was unleashing the carnage was Ethan Blaine Nieneker, a 32-year-old male from Austin, Texas. But Ethan was no stranger to trouble as he had an extensive criminal record that dated back to 2011, when he was 18 years old. That year, he was first charged with driving under the influence. In 2015, he had also been charged with driving under the influence and criminal mischief after he got drunk and broke furniture, walls, mirrors, and doors of his girlfriend's house, causing about $140,000 worth of damage. But luckily for him, that ended in probation, which meant he was not in jail but at his home under supervision. As the years passed, the charges only got more serious. In 2016, he was charged with allegedly assaulting his girlfriend, whom we'll be calling Lara, who was found with a burst blood vessel in her eye after Ethan punched her repeatedly. Lara said that Ethan claimed,
I know how to hurt someone and not leave marks.
For this, Ethan spent 2 months in jail and was released in January 2017. In 2019, 6 years before the event when he was 26, Ethan was again arrested by the police after he punched his roommate. But this time, the case was dismissed because the roommate couldn't be contacted by the police. But everything would reach its peak on the hot Texas afternoon of August 11th, 2025. On that day, Ethan got up and decided to drive to the Target located on Research Boulevard in Austin, Texas. When he first arrived, he parked his car and spotted Rosa Machuca Osorio, a 24-year-old Target employee, arranging shopping carts, completely unaware that Ethan was watching her. Rosa, a trans woman, was in a relationship of 11 years with Kim Dang and was leading a peaceful life. Kim described Rosa by saying,
She was my sunshine. She always lights up a room everywhere she goes. She was the love of my life for a reason.
After watching her for some time, Ethan went up to her and physically attacked her. After a brief struggle, he pulled out his gun and opened fire at her. It was at this moment that Ashley and Audrey heard the gunshots and fled through the store, unaware of exactly what had happened. And while they managed to escape, Ethan's attack was only the beginning. Ethan then turned and spotted a Toyota 4Runner in the parking lot, in which were Astrid Chow, who was just learning to walk, and her grandparents, 65-year-old Adam and 60-year-old Doris Chow. Astrid loved singing, dancing, and spending time with her grandfather Adam, who was considered the backbone of the Chow family. Adam and Doris brought Astrid along on a quick errand that afternoon to the Target, not knowing that this would be a fatal decision. After spotting Chow's Toyota, Ethan walked up to the car and opened fire on Adam and Astrid and killed them both. When Doris tried to escape, Ethan pushed her to the ground while she was still holding her deceased granddaughter Astrid and then drove away in the vehicle. At approximately 2:20 p.m., Ethan found a water truck parked alongside the Mopac Expressway, a major highway through Austin, and stopped the Toyota. He then approached the truck, opened the door and repeatedly punched the driver before pushing him out of the truck, but it didn't go as planned because Ethan didn't know how to drive a water truck. After trying multiple times, disappointed and angry, he got out of the truck and randomly chased a passerby with a gun in his hand before giving up empty-handed and driving away in his stolen Toyota. At around 2:25 p.m., Ethan crashed the Toyota into an Infiniti SUV, and at around this time, police received a call reporting the crash. He got out of the Toyota and stopped an approaching Volkswagen driven by a woman whom we will call Leah. He went up to the car, opened the door, and assaulted Leah by punching her in the face. After that, Ethan pulled Leah out of the car and drove the Volkswagen. At around 2:34 p.m., Ethan exited the stolen Volkswagen and tried to steal another vehicle, but that attempt also failed, and he drove away in the Volkswagen instead. Then, Ethan drove to the home of someone he knew, whom we'll be calling David. David was an acquaintance of Ethan through a Bible study class, and on that day, Ethan went to David's house, located on the 2100 block of La Casa Drive, and threw a brick through one of the windows. From that point on, there was no confirmed sightings of Ethan for the next 20 minutes, and it remains unclear what he did during that time. But that changed at 2:58 p.m. when the police department received a call reporting a naked man walking through the backyard of a home on 2400 La Casa Drive who matched Ethan's description. When officers arrived, they found Ethan running into a porta potty. The rampage finally came to an end at 3:06 p.m. when officers cornered Ethan and took him down with the taser. What Ethan said once he was in custody was somehow worse than what he'd just done. Officers said he told them,
I have a confession to make. I killed a man and a baby girl today in the Target parking lot. I shot them both because I am Jesus.
He claimed that he wanted to set them free from his life. When officers asked why he hadn't attacked Doris in the same way, he first claimed that mothers are pure. He then changed his answer, saying it was because he had run out of bullets. As for why he killed Rosa, he replied, misgendering her.
His eyes rolled into the back of his head and I shot him.
And then he described it as a random act. Finally, on August 20th, 10 days after the event, Ethan was charged with 2 counts of capital murder and 1 count of first-degree murder. Capital murder is reserved when a person kills more than one individual, while first-degree is for one person. Here, Ethan got charged for capital murder for shooting Astrid and Adam, while he got first-degree murder for killing Rosa. On top of this, he got 5 additional felonies, including a serious assault charge and attempted robbery. Ashley, a speech pathologist herself, reported that after the incident, she developed symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress, including reoccurring nightmares and anxiety attacks. She said she was trying to overcome it by spending more time bonding with her family. What comes next, however, unfolded like a scene straight out of a horror movie.
He was choking her.
Oh my gosh.
She was almost dead. I don't know who's that guy.
On the evening of June 17, 2026, customers inside a Target store on Tierra Recheta Road in Simi Valley, California were waiting in line, paying for their purchases and preparing to leave, just like any other ordinary day. But within seconds, people were screaming, phones were recording, and strangers were stepping in to stop an attack they never saw coming. The entire incident unfolded in front of dozens of witnesses. While the cell phone footage recorded much of what had happened, it couldn't explain why a woman who had never met her attacker was suddenly fighting for her life. Standing at one of the checkout counters was a woman whose identity had never been made public. Since we'll be referring to her for the rest of the story, we'll call her Sarah. Sarah was simply waiting to pay for her purchases just like everyone else. At the same time, another customer had also entered the store. His name was Rajion Morgan Tabor, 34 years old. Nothing about his presence immediately drew attention. He had no connection with Sarah, and nothing suggested the two had ever met before that evening. As far as anyone in that store could tell, he was just another shopper working his way through the aisles. But less than 24 hours earlier, Rajion had been sitting in custody. He'd been arrested back in March of that year for indecent exposure and for assaulting a police officer, and he'd been placed on mandatory supervision after those incidents. And yet, less than a day before he walked through those sliding doors, the system let him go. No monitor tracking him and no flags raised. Nothing stood between him and a store full of strangers who had every reason to feel safe and no reason at all to expect what was coming. Then, around 6 p.m., he made his way toward the checkout lanes, towards Sarah, and stopped right behind her. She never saw him coming. Without a word, Rajion wrapped his arms around her from behind and started choking her. clamping one hand down over her nose and mouth so she couldn't scream and couldn't even pull in a breath. For a few seconds, it was just the two of them, and everyone else in the checkout lines was still trying to process what they were even looking at. Then, a woman nearby, whom we'll call Gina, broke from the line and rushed at Rajion, grabbing at him and trying to physically tear him off Sarah. He threw her off almost instantly, and the struggle spilled out of the checkout lanes and into the clothing section a few aisles over. That single pushback was all it took for more people to react. Customers rushed in from every direction, along with the Target loss prevention officer who joined the effort to pull Rajion away. But Rajion didn't let go. Instead, he turned on them. Rajion shoved Gina to the ground hard enough that she couldn't immediately get back up. He then sank his teeth into another shopper who grabbed at his arm and snatched a glass bottle off a nearby shelf, throwing it directly at the loss prevention officer. That's when Andy Garby and another bystander jumped in. What followed wasn't a clear restraint, it was a full-blown brawl. Racks of shirts and jackets shaking as bodies crashed into them. Not far away, 15-year-old Grant, Andy's son, had his phone out recording everything unfolding in front of him. But he wasn't just capturing footage. He had his younger sister, only 4 years old, standing there with him the entire time with the toy in her hand, completely clueless as to what was happening, and shielded her from whatever might happen next. For a moment, it looked like the fight had been broken up. Andy and the other bystander had Rajion restrained, but then he broke loose, and this time he didn't go after another adult. He moved toward the grocery section where a teenager was standing with his back turned, completely unaware of what was happening just a few feet away. Rajion struck him from behind before anyone could stop it. Andy saw it happen and didn't hesitate. He went after Rajion again, this time in the middle of the grocery section, wrestling him back down to the floor and trying to hold him there. Later, Andy described what he saw in that moment.
He looked homeless. He had like the most bloodshot demon eyes I've ever seen. He was definitely honest.
By then, Target employees had already made their decision. They weren't waiting to find out what happened next. They started evacuating customers towards the exits, clearing the store while the police were still on their way. When officers finally arrived, they found Rajion in the grocery aisle, surrounded by merchandise he'd thrown off the shelves in the chaos. They took him into custody without further incident. By the time it was over, several people, including the teenager who'd been struck from behind, walked away with minor injuries and were treated right there at the scene. Sarah was rushed to a local hospital by her family members. She was listed in stable condition. And that's when the full weight of it started to sink in for the officers. There had never been any history between Sarah and Rajion, no motive of any kind, just a stranger standing at the wrong counter and a man who'd been free for less than a single day. 6 days later, on June 23rd, prosecutors charged Rajion with felony willful, deliberate, premeditated attempted murder, along with 2 misdemeanor counts of battery, 1 misdemeanor count of assault, and 1 misdemeanor count of child abuse. When he appeared in court, Rajion didn't enter a plea. The judge suspended proceedings entirely, ordering a competency hearing for July 16th. Until then, he remains in custody on $750,000 bail, waiting to find out whether he's even considered fit to stand trial for what he did. But as senseless as this attack was, this next case is even more disturbing since the attack could have easily been prevented before it escalated into total chaos.
Confronted him and told him, the young boy, that he was going to stab him and kill him.
It is November 15th, 2022, inside a Target at a large shopping mall called the Fig at 7th Shopping Center in downtown Los Angeles. A 40-year-old homeless man named David Franklin walks in. At around 6:20 that evening, nothing out of the ordinary is going on until David makes an entrance. Nobody in that building has any idea that in the next 4 minutes, 2 people are going to be fighting for their lives. David walks in dressed in all black, and almost immediately, an employee who we'll refer to as Sarah clocks him trying to rip open a package of knives from the kitchenware aisle. Sarah assumes it's a theft and tells him to pay for it, but he ignores her completely, and Sarah doesn't wait around. Instead, she immediately radios the store's in-house security team, known as Asset Protection. Someone from the team shows up and tries to talk him down, but that doesn't work. David was able to get his hands on one of the knives in the package and was armed now. He starts starts raging, threatening anyone who comes near him. In the middle of a crowded store, suddenly, David turns toward a young boy named Braden Medina, who is 31 years younger than him. Braden had been shopping with his mother, but had somehow gotten separated from her, and according to Mitchell Moore, the chief of the Los Angeles Police Department, David tells Braden more than once that he's going to end his life. When Braden tries to run for his survival, David, without any hesitation, attacks him, cutting across his back and left shoulder. Meanwhile, the acid protection team tries to calm David down, but it doesn't work. With David now holding a weapon and out of control, the store staff tells everyone shopping there that they need to leave right away for their own safety, but it's already too late. David suddenly moves to his second victim, who is a 24-year-old flight attendant, Shohei-san. Shohei was just killing time while she was on a layover and out shopping like everyone else in the store. Out of nowhere, she's attacked, taking a wound to the chest, and shoppers nearby pull Shohei into the pharmacy, then slam the gate shut behind her to keep David out. Somewhere else in the store, someone finally reaches Braden, bringing him to safety. As the people flood towards the exit to leave the store, David starts walking toward the front entrance, where he meets an armed security guard. That's when Enadino Espinoza, a contracted security guard, has an encounter with David. Enadino wasn't actually a Target employee. He worked for Watermark Security Group, which was a private security company Target had hired to guard the store. Witnesses say David lunges at him with the knife. Enadino tries the baton first, which doesn't stop him, so he draws his weapon and fires 2 shots, hitting David in the stomach. From the moment he walked through those doors to the moment he was shot, the entire thing lasted about 4 minutes. David is already on the ground when police along with paramedics flood the store, and one by one, all 3 of them are wheeled out to the ambulances waiting outside. Braden survives and he's released from the hospital about 5 weeks later, just before Christmas that year. But the lawsuit that was filed on his behalf describes injuries that were grave and life-changing. Shohei survives too, undergoing surgery that night for her chest wound. But David wasn't so lucky. He was rushed to the hospital after being shot and didn't survive the night. After investigations, the Los Angeles Police Department, or LAPD, said the attack was random and that David didn't know either of his victims. Target's own attorneys later argue in court that David was simply not in the right state of mind and that there was never a motive to find in the first place. About 4 months later, in March of 2023, both victims filed the same main argument against Target, that the armed guard, Enadino, and the other staff had a chance to step in and stop Braden's attacker before he ever got to Shohei, but they didn't act in time. Their lawsuits also argued Target knew the area around the store had seen a rise in crime and homelessness, yet still couldn't stop the deranged man from walking freely into the store and grabbing the 9-inch butcher knife he used on both of them. Target denied they were responsible and fought to get the case thrown out, but the court wouldn't allow it. Target wasn't the only company named in the lawsuits. Braden and Shohei also sued Brookfield Properties, the company that owns the mall the Target sits in, and Watermark Security Group, the private security company that employed Adino, since each of these had a different job that day. By the time the case neared trial in late 2024, Target was the only one of the 3 still in it. The case dragged on for almost 2 years, 20 months to be exact, from March 2023 to November 1st, 2024, the day before it was set to go to trial. That's when attorneys for both victims quietly told the judge the case had been resolved, meaning we won't know how much, if anything, Target paid.
An 18-year-old was killed and a 15-year-old boy is now in custody.
The Humble Mall has been a major part of American life and culture for years. It's where you shop, get your ears pierced, meet up with friends, and eat questionable food that keeps you glued to the toilet. But for the family of Andreas Sauceda Garcia, it's the last place they would ever see their son and brother alive. It's Friday, the 26th of June 2026. The Target at West Valley Mall in Tracy, California is busy as usual. People come and go to do their shopping, and among this crowd is Andreas, who is running an errand for his mother. Having just turned 18 a few months ago, Andreas has his whole life ahead of him. He has just gotten his first credit card, bagged a job in construction, and has plans to return to school. He is another American teenager full of hopes and dreams. But all of that changes at 6:30 p.m. Around this time, dispatchers at the Tracy Police Department begin receiving a ton of calls from West Valley Mall, so they send some officers to check out the situation. But nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to see. Minutes later, the officers arrive at the scene to find
Two teenage boys in very different positions. One is on the floor surrounded by strangers trying to keep him alive, while another crowd holds the other to stop him from running away.
The officers immediately swing into action, calling an ambulance before going to collect the other teenager. But the detainee is not Andreas. It's a 15-year-old boy who we know absolutely nothing about. For that reason, let's call him John. According to witnesses, Andreas was outside of Target when John attacked him. After stabbing him multiple times, John simply began walking away, leaving Andreas to fight for his life. Bystanders who had seen the whole thing jumped in to help Andreas, and some even tried to stop John and finally succeeded around Hobby Lobby, while others called the police. Andreas is finally rushed to a local hospital, but he doesn't make it. His family is then called to identify the body, and his passing marks the first homicide of the year in Tracy, California. What makes this case very disturbing is that witnesses didn't say anything about an argument or altercation between John and Andreas. In fact, the two teenagers appeared to know each other. Andreas' sister, Andrea Sauceda, more or less, confirmed this during an interview, telling reporters that when she found out who it was from her mother, she got really mad. But no one has made a peep about John's real identity to date. Instead, investigators are looking for more information and witnesses to understand the case better. In the meantime, the spot in front of the Target has become a memorial for Andreas. His family has also set up a GoFundMe to help with the funeral costs, while his mother, Rosalinda Garcia, continues to seek justice for her son.
This afternoon at about 5:21 p.m., our Santa Monica police officer was on foot in full uniform. He had come out to the front of the station to meet with a couple of residents to take follow-up information on an unrelated case.
It's October 5th, 2024, a Saturday about 5:21 in the evening. An officer, we'll call him Nathan since his name was never made public, steps outside for what should take 5 minutes. He's on foot, full uniform, and he's come out to the front of Santa Monica Police Headquarters to meet a couple of residents who want to give him follow-up information on a case that has nothing to do with what's about to happen. He's in his mid-30s and has already spent about 10 years in the force. What he doesn't know is that minutes earlier, a few blocks away, something already happened that he has no way of knowing about yet. Inside a Target on Broadway, a 28-year-old man who was originally from New York State and was named Dia Abdelhadi Halibe walks up to an employee and asks her to bring him a pack of knives from the back. It's an ordinary request and she goes and gets it for him, but when she hands it over, Dia shoves her to the ground and runs out the doors into the street with the knife set still sealed in its packaging, and nobody chasing him yet. But instead of trying to get away, he walks straight toward the one building in the city guaranteed to have armed police inside it. By the time Dia reaches the courtyard outside Santa Monica Police Headquarters, he rings the call button mounted by the door. The same button anyone would press to ask an officer to come out. Two other residents are already standing there waiting for their turn to talk to an officer, same as anyone with a question for the police, and Dia falls in next to them with his right hand tucked inside his jacket. Soon afterward, Nathan opens the door and finds all three of them there.
What's in your jacket? I'm kind of nervous with your hand in your jacket like that.
Nathan says to Dia. And then Nathan tells Dia,
let me talk to them first and then we can talk.
Trying to keep the moment ordinary, trying to buy himself a few seconds to read whatever this is. But Dia's answer comes back as a question.
You're nervous?
Then he pulls the knife free and slashes at Nathan, who is hit in the neck and the shoulder before he can even get his weapon out. Nathan runs for the corner of the building, trying to put something solid between himself and the blade. But Dia catches up before he gets there, and for a moment neither of them is standing. They go down together, grappling on the pavement. Nathan is the one who gets back up first, but not all the way. He's still pushing himself off the ground when he starts firing. Sidearm raised, Dia still within arm's reach.
Get on the ground,
he shouts. Dia doesn't stay down either. He stands back up, the knife still in his hand. He never once lets go of it and starts closing the distance again. Nathan fires again.
Get on the ground! Shots fired! Shots fired!
And Dia is critically injured. He'd only been in the Santa Monica area for about a week with no criminal record in California and no prior contact with this department. Nothing that would have warned anyone today was the day this was going to happen. Santa Monica Fire responds and starts treating both men on the scene. For Dia, it isn't enough. He's pronounced dead where he fell, while Nathan is rushed to a nearby emergency room. A day later, the department shares an update. He's been released from the hospital, home, and focusing on getting better. The next morning, Police Chief Raymond Batista stands in front of cameras and lays out what the department knows, which isn't much. This was an unprovoked attack, he tells reporters. The case gets split into two separate investigations. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office opens a review into whether Nathan's use of force was justified, which is just standard procedure, not really an accusation. Separately, the county coroner's office comes to recover Diaz's body and investigate on why he even did something like this to begin with. California law gives departments 45 days to release footage from incidents like this one. About 6.5 weeks later, Santa Monica police did exactly that. Body camera and surveillance video cut together showing the entire sequence from the moment he raised the knife to the moment it ended.